Then I'll use.
Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this web. Thank you, everyone, for finding time to join this conversation that we'll be having this afternoon. It is now my humble duty to welcome Abna Collins, who will be the moderator of the day. Welcome, Abna.
Thank you very much for the welcome, and just also warm welcome to all advocates and members of the legal family who have joined us today for this webinar. I hope we are all keeping safe this Mandamano Wednesday. And without much ado, because we are behind time in terms of when we should start, just briefly, maybe just go through what we will be subject to our discussion today, which is the role of lawyers and relevant institutions in championing for rights of persons with disability. Our guest speaker for the day will be Susan Wafula, who will be joining us a bit later. But for now, we have a state counsel from the Office of the Attorney General who will have welcoming remarks very briefly. His name is Kizito Ouma. I hope I can see he's present. So, Kizito, without further ado, you could perhaps proceed with the introduction and maybe just your welcoming remarks. Thank you. Kizito, we can see you, but we can't hear you. Maybe if you could try and unmute.
Just a minute. Okay, now you can hear me. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I was saying my name is
We can
Kizito
hear you
Uma.
now.
So as I was saying, my name is Kizito Uma. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I work as a legislative drafter in the Office of the Attorney General, and I'm a person living with disability. Mostly the work I do is to do with legislative drafting, but also I've done a bit of work to do with persons with disability, more so just advocacy, as I believe I belong to this group of persons. So I usually try to do as much as possible to highlight their plights and to do advocacy whenever I can. So that is basically about me. So as the topic suggests, we were to talk about the role of the law, role of lawyers, and perhaps institutions that probably may help in championing the rights of persons with disability. I guess that's right, Abna.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So if I may just start with the introductory remark, we know as lawyers that we have a role towards the society, and in fact, it is this role for lawyers that usually we talk about, and we say sometimes during the times of Shakespeare, you remember the things that were not very good that were said about lawyers, including "let us kill all the lawyers." It's because of the role that lawyers play in the society. So lawyers have different roles, and these different roles then culminate into what we do. So perhaps if I may just go through them in a bit, there is the role of taking care of your clients, which we all do in all the spheres of us being lawyers. We always take care of our clients. It could be taking care of your clients in private practice. It could be taking care of your clients in the public spaces. So whatever the needs of the client is what we look for. But then again, there's another role of lawyers of thinking about justice, and that you make sure that the society is more just, and you try and fulfill the role of lawyers in ensuring that there's justice, there's equilibrium in the society, there's equity and equality, and that is also another role that lawyers play. Another role, and more so akin to what we're discussing today, is the role of promoting and promoting human rights. Because when we go into the realm of disability laws, then we're talking about human rights. And therefore, this is now where this is where we can place, this is the place that we can put this discussion on. That then what is the role of us as lawyers in championing disability rights? What is the role in understanding disability rights, in understanding our society as it is, and therefore perhaps making it better for those of us who live with disability? Now, going back to the reason why perhaps we looked at this topic, we understand that even within ourselves as lawyers, we have those of us who have hearing impairment, we have those of us who are living with autism, we have those of us who are living with albinism, we have those of us who different disability within the law fraternity. So what are we doing as a society to try and make sure that we have provided for them? So this is what probably provided the need for this topic. Now, as I continue, let me just go to probably the institutions that I may think about with regards to this topic. And the first institution that I think about, in fact, it is LSK. That then LSK is given a role under Section 4, I believe, of the Act, that they promote equality and justice, and even advise the government on legislative matters. I believe that is one of the role of LSK. So then the question then goes on, that what does LSK do towards the persons with disability within LSK and those who are not within LSK? What are these challenges that Kenyans with disability go through that then LSK can put a hand to it and say, this is what we're doing as a society? So then that's just a question that perhaps we can ponder about as we continue. The second institution that I may think about is the National Council for Persons with Disability. Now, National Council for Persons with Disability has a number of roles that are put within the Act. But remember, they are like, it's called semi-autonomous government agency that then deals with, it is one agency, it is one agency or one organization or institution that then deals directly with persons with disability. So that's another institution that perhaps we may think about when talking about the rights of disability. The other institution that we may think about is the Ministry of Health and the Line Ministry. Because remember, a lot of disability in Kenya and even in the world happened because of probably health reasons. Then even after somebody gets to be one of persons who live with the disability, then it is a health question that the Ministry of Health is one that we cannot say that can be out of the picture. Then the line ministry, the government has a ministry. The title of the ministry keeps changing, but then we have a line ministry that then deals with persons with disability. The other institution that probably is important is CARE. This is to do with from issues of tax to all that, because some of these things, they affect persons with disability directly. So those are some of the institutions that then probably we can look at them from the role and say, what is the role of these people vis-a-vis the law? Now, as I continue, I just want to highlight, just in brief, tying them to the roles of persons with disability, the laws that perhaps we may be looking at to look at how now this institution tied to the first one, of course, is the Constitution of Kenya. Now, the Constitution of Kenya has been touted to be one very good document compared to a lot of documents in Africa and compared to a lot of documents perhaps in the world, more so in the human rights sector. And Article 54, if I may just mention, is what we didn't have it in the colonial constitution or in the pre-colonial constitution, but with this constitution, it was felt that it was important to put it in. Now, it spells out a few rights that then the persons with disability are entitled to. That makes a very big difference because perhaps it then tells persons with disability that ideally they should be in the mainstream and not marginalized. The other piece of legislation that is going under review and perhaps probably will get a new act is Persons with Disability Act. There's an attempt to have it amended, but it has a myriad of rights and a myriad of provisions for persons with disability. Perhaps as we go through the roles of the institutions, we may touch on these rights. Then there is the African Charter. That again, it's a regional document that touches on a number of rights for persons with disability. Sorry. Then we have the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. That then again, it is like the Mother Act that a lot of these rights have come from. So when you look at it from looking at the laws and then looking at the laws, then looking at the institutions and the lawyers, then you get a point that lawyers have they have a stake in what happens to persons with disability or in promoting and looking for fulfillment of these rights. Now, a colleague once asked me, what happens if a person with disability today walks into a hospital and asks to be treated? Because in the writing of the law as it is right now, it says that every person with disability has a right to free medical care. So then what happens if you walk into a hospital or you get into a hospital and say, I want to be treated? What then happens? Whether it is public or it's private hospital, what are they to do? Are they to offer the free medical services as it is? Or what then happens with regards to this? So, Abna.
Yes, Kizito.
Perhaps if we can involve the members in thinking about this question that I've posed, that if a person with disability walks into a hospital or gets into a hospital and asks today, I want to be treated, the law says that I have entitlement to free medical health. what then happens?
Very well, very well. I think so that we can have a structured conversation. Perhaps we can have, yes, I can see maybe members who are ready to contribute to do so by way of hands. So I'll give the council member, Nicholas Wavinya Teresia. You can maybe go in first and let us have very brief insight because of we are restricted in terms of time. Nicholas, then she'll be followed by Eric Wakoko.
Thank you very much, Abna, and thank you very much for that good presentation. Well, currently, that's actually a quagmire. I have seen it happening, whereby people with disability go to the hospital, even dispensary, and they're not given medical care for free as per the law. And I find it to be lack of capacity building. You find most hospitals, be it level 5, be it at the lowest level of a dispensary, they're not even aware of this. So it may be the government, through even county governments, can actually disseminate this information through public participation and building capacity to these medics in all hospitals, then this can be adhered to. But until then, that lacuna is still there. They are not being given free medical services. Thank you.
Yes, Wakoko, and also so that we cannot restrict our views, we can use the chat box. I'll be perusing and maybe also sharing some of the sentiments.
Good afternoon, comrades. My name is Eric Wakoko, and I'm listening in from Uganda. So the case in Uganda is it's possible that somebody will give you the medical service freely, but the challenge is you do not have time to exactly tell them what is or what kind of treatment you want to get. So just from the onset, as you enter a health facility, they focus on if you have a visual impairment. They want to already refer you to the eye department or anywhere that concerns the kind of impairment you have. So it goes back to what the colleagues were saying about capacity building, but I think we shall have a lot more to discuss around this. The how of doing it is also important to focus on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Abna, can I continue just to conclude so that another person can get time?
Yes, yes.
Now, this is the reason why I brought up that question is just to demonstrate that even within the law fraternity, we have challenges that persons with disability go through. Then outside the legal profession, there are also challenges that persons with disability go through. Now, let me start with the legal profession. We have a lot of persons with disability within the legal profession, both in Nairobi and even outside Nairobi. And a number of challenges begin from even when you're leaving KSL, because then the issues of pupillage and access become an issue. So maybe just to outline them because of time, then probably we will go through this as we unbundle them and think about them. Issues of access. That is because sometimes you go to offices where we don't have ramps. You go to offices where there are no lifts. You go to offices where the doorways are a bit tiny for wheelchair use and so on. And for those who are visually impaired, the issues of, there is Braille, there are softwares that they use in computers, which is an issue. So probably we can look at that. There are a lot of my colleagues who have always told me, I don't have space for pupillage. I don't have space to go and start my holding over and all that. And then the issue of now getting work to do. It's a very big challenge for persons with disability. Perhaps within the legal fraternity, we need to have a conversation of how do we facilitate this within the law firm, within government institutions, parliament, and all that. By the way, another big institution I forgot to mention was parliament. Parliament is also a very big institution when it comes to their role within helping persons with disability. So that is one. Then two, continuous legal education. Let us think within the realm of that. How do we make sure that these persons with disability who are probably starting in their career get continuous legal education? Then there are issues to do with practicing certificates. There are those who are starting and cannot afford practicing certificate. What can the society do about it? Is there anything that we can do as lawyers to make sure that as the government says affirmative action, we also say affirmative action within our society. Then yeah, that is within the legal fraternity. As I mentioned, role of institutions. There are institutions like the ministries. There are still challenges in access. Like, for example, I know very well of the Ministry of Health, where persons with disability get a lot of challenges, more so in getting tax exemption certificates and all that. When we talk about, again, when we look at the role of institutions, my colleague who is talking about National Council will tell you how they work and probably the challenges they face and all that. So I don't want to get into that. But let us think of how, first of all, we can make our society better with regards to persons with disability. Then outside there, like with the example of the health issue, there are other issues, some that may require us to go to court and get judgment, some that may require us just to advocate and make sure that the government works. Any other question? I think that I have that brief presentation for you, but I'm open to any question or any clarification.
Thank you very much, Kizito, for the insight. And for me, I've really taken it up as a challenge, especially as a society. I mean, there's really much to do in terms of catering for our brothers and sisters who are now persons living with disability. And I think this question and conversation should start with ourselves. We've looked at it in the general perspective in terms of the legislature, that is parliament, what are they doing? I've seen Ludia Luther also mentioning that judiciary is also a key institution. So basically, this is a key area in law which we need to really look into and see how we can enhance their rights and practice, especially at the LSK level. I've heard you talk of challenge, uh, which regards getting pupillage and such training. So we really need to see how we can even bolster and enhance our statutes so that we can have enough space. I mean, we are now at around 23,000, and of course, with statistics, then follows that we really have a number of members who fall within this category. So thank you very much, Kizito, for your well put brief presentation. And just to mention to members that Kizito has also written a book by the name Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Kenya. Perhaps, I'm sure in the book he has engaged more, and I know he will share before the end of the session how whoever is interested in getting this book, how they can be able to get it. Now, before I get to invite our guest speaker, I'll quickly just brush through some of the comments. Luther was trying to contemplate on the first question in light of a progressive realization of the right to health, especially in cases where resources are low. And I think Teresia, in response to that, had also said that resources and capacity is where we really lack. Karen Miruki also talks of, for her, the reason is lack of capacity building, stigma, and lack of awareness creation, as well as accessibility infrastructure. Vincent also comments and says that disability needs to be redefined from the model perspective towards social model of disability. Wow, I think I found that a bit technical. Vincent perhaps will expound on that. And finally, Tess also talks of, as a society, we need to do a lot of capacity building so as to disseminate the information to the people on the ground, involving all stakeholders. So I think we are cruising nicely. And thank you once again, Kizito, for taking us through the first bit of our webinar today. So without much ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya of 11 years standing. Our guest speaker is also a certified professional mediator and is also a lead author in various guides. She's the lead author of the National Guide to Disability Rights. She's also a part of the Legal Aid Clinic report. She's also a contributing author of a guide for Judicial Training Institute. She's also part of the team that came up with training curriculum on environmental law for judges and magistrates in Africa, and also a contributing expert in enforcement of environmental law, good practices from Africa and Asia, Volume 2, cooperation between the United Nations Environmental Program and China, and also an expert in legislative drafting, policy development, and treaties or conventions. She has also been involved in the review of various acts, including the HELP Act, Persons with Disability, and National Persons with Disability Policy, among other. She is currently the Chief Legal Officer at the National Council for Persons with Disability as the head of the legal department. In her role, she deals with matters related to disability rights and implementation of the Convention on the Persons with Disability. So without much ado, I'd like to welcome Ms. Susan Wekesa to take it from there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, so as you've heard, I'm Susan Wekesa from the National Council for Persons with Disability. The National Council is a state corporation that is incorporated under the Persons with Disability Act 203, and we are currently mandated to handle matters of disability nationwide. So far, in regards to law and it's called an implementation of the law, we have engaged various stakeholders in promoting the rights for persons with disability in the health sector, and also in promoting their rights and privileges under various acts and various regulations. The current situation in the council right now that we're trying to push is it's called the enactment of the Persons with Disability Bill to 2023, which we found that it requires to be overhauled as per se for the Convention for Persons with Disability. So we tried to incorporate the Constitution. We also tried to incorporate the Convention, the rights that are enshrined in those two documents, and also some other few emerging developments that have So now the bill has been presented to Parliament for the first reading. And it also has a county element, so it has to go also to the Senate to offer free medical services. But we are only successful in getting 13 counties to waive the assessment fees. There's normally persons with disability have to go for an assessment so that can, and at least 13 counties have waived that fee. It was a fee of 1,000, others were charging like 5,000, so that when it comes to treatment, any kind of treatment that is given and offered to persons with disability, they do either a waiver or they charge has received. And then we currently are trying to also develop a pro bono scheme for persons with disability. We are going to engage mostly LSK, the AG's office, in order to operationalize the Legal Aid Act, because it says the AG in consultation with LSK and the council to come up with strategies or schemes in which persons with disability can be able to get legal aid, ability to get legal aid. In the other area, we are trying to review the national policy on persons with disability, because it has been existent from 2006, so that it can be able to incorporate all the social elements. We move away from the medical, because we are focused. Kenya has focused on the medical model of disability. So we want to go to the social, economic, so that you can have a barrier-free environment and an accessible environment. The council in promoting accessibility and an accessible environment, we normally conduct accessibility audits for institutions, so that you can come there, we see if your doors, toilets, or is actually accessible for any person with disability and any kind of kit that they will be able to implement. And we are also trying to work with Ministry of Labor to find opportunities for persons with disability abroad or within the country when investors are coming in, so that you can be able to persons with disability to become more dependent and employment, where because most of the persons with disability rely on being employed by the government, and yet there's the issue of actually getting those opportunities. So we are trying to incorporate the private sector to be able to achieve under the constitution the 5%, so that we be able to empower and encourage persons with disability, because most of them have different types of skills and different types of levels of education. As for the council, we are trying to see whether we can be able to also offer people able to help students in law school who have approached us or have done their internship, and they say that they have that challenge in regards to getting pupillage. There are various things that the council has done in regards to promoting the rights for persons with disability. And we believe that if we get or we push for the persons with disability bill 2023, we will be able to solve some of the issues that keep on emerging, and also find structures through our national persons with disability policy that disability their rights and the implementation. We also have it's called
Kasa, I don't know if I think we've lost you.
Of it. So we are going to try on that. We have also tried to collaborate with other institutions and other partners to be able to find programs that advocate for the rights of persons with disability. There are the most popping rights that we are seeing right now is the right to reproductive health for women and girls with disability. We came to find out that that is an area that has not been concentrated. There's no much concentration towards it. So we are trying to see of a way of promoting that right for women and girls with disability. Other than that, we have done several things, but we are trying to progress. So I don't want to speak more, but I am open for questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think we've also had some network challenge. We missed you maybe some bit of the presentation, but now that it's open for questions, maybe if someone wants a clarification, can easily just raise maybe on the comment box or raise their hand so that we can conclude. As we wait, maybe for those who want to talk, there's a question here from Grace Kirui, who asks that what is the rationale for the recurrent reassessment where one's disability has already approved as permanent? I think that's a situation where maybe you had some form of disability, but now it has become permanent. So perhaps, Susan, as a starter, we can take that. Then also a comment from Vincent. He says the social model paradigm has its roots in the disabled people's movement, that is the union of the physically impaired against segregation. It offers a radical and workable strategy for ending exclusion and oppression for persons with disability. Further, the social model language rejects the negative and medical language and replaces it with language that describes more socially recognized language for people with disabilities. For instance, disabled persons are not handicapped. Thank you very much, Vincent. You have been very insightful throughout this session. So perhaps, if Susan, we can take that first as we wait for maybe more feedback. That is a question from Grace Kiroy, who is asking what is the recurrent reassessment where one's disability has already approved as permanent. I think this is one where now you are termed as now maybe it's now permanent. You're permanently disabled.
Okay, thank you. The issue is, let me give a brief background. Before, the council used to register anyone that had a disability. And then we came to realize that there is the difference between disability and treatment. So now there was the question of temporary disability. So when we did when we saw the statistics, we came to realize that the numbers either kept reducing or increasing over the years, depending on the census. So now, as a way forward, the council decided that to clean up our data and to be able to give correct data, we decided that everyone who has been registered and who has been registered under the council is supposed to go for reassessment so that we can be able to remove those ones who were in the period of recovery but had a disability, but they have recovered and do not have the disability, to do away with the term of temporary disability. So now people are being reassessed so that they can be able to be migrated to the new system. The National Council has a new system in which we are migrating people from the old system to the new one. So you need to go and be assessed because now your medical report has you for those ones in the old system have medical reports that are old. Let's say, for example, 5 years or 10 years old. So now we want you just to be migrated into the new system with there's a new medical assessment tool that was developed by MOH, so that once you are moved into the new system, you will not be required to do reassessment, so that your disability has been deemed and termed as permanent. But now in the old system, we have people who had temporary disability, now they are okay, so we need to sort of weed them out. So once, for those ones who have already migrated, there's no reassessment. The only thing that you will require to be reassessed is when you're coming for your tax exemption, because KRA says your medical report has to be at least not more than 5 years old. So let's say I got my disability, and then in 2020 I can use that medical report until 5 years have lapsed. Then after 5 years, for the purpose of getting a tax exemption, you have to be re-examined, reassessed. But for the other purposes, you do not necessarily require that. So now that is the development in the background behind being reassessed, so that you move to the new system. But the exception being, if you are applying for tax exemption, you will require a recent medical assessment if the one that you have has reached the age, has 5 years has lapsed.
Thank you very much for that. I hope Grace, your hand was up. I hope you've been satisfactorily answered. Perhaps we can have Zena Rashid. Your hand is up. Yes, you can go ahead. I think we are having challenges with your audio. I can see Kizito wants to say something, and maybe just to use a bit of my discretion. Vincent, if we can have a bit of reaction from yourself. You've been actually quite insightful and active on the comment box. Yes, Kizito, you can go ahead. Then maybe we can have Vincent.
Okay, I understand what Susan is saying, and I think a lot of people would be on board with what happens. That they have to clean up the system, because then with cleaning up the system, they can start to have a new structure and new data. And I believe that as they even offer the new IDs for persons with disability, it will be able to tell whether somebody has a permanent disability or a temporary disability, so as then to be able to know where we're moving. But Susan, where I know a lot of us have a challenge, and perhaps I can offer this as an issue that people have, is even within that tax exemption certificate. Because if you tell a person with disability that after 5 years, you are going to renew your tax exemption certificate, and you're going to have a new, let's say, a new medical evaluation, why are you asking somebody with albinism to go and have a new medical evaluation? Because you see, albinism is kind of permanent. So even if he goes, and when we go for the medical evaluation, we pay. And sometimes because of the system, we even pay more than what is required or what is known. So I would believe, and I've always thought and I've always offered, that once my ID is able to say this is a permanent kind of disability, then either we can talk to KRA as one of the institutions to be able to give us, even if you have to go for the 5 years renewal because of maybe your income, but then you don't have to do another medical report. I think that would be better, especially for those who have permanent disability. But that's just my thinking, because it appears when you tell somebody with albinism to go after 5 years for medical, and you know very well that the situation is not accident or something, it appears like you're making the process a little more difficult for them. So that is just an opinion that I hold, and I know a lot of persons with disability like me hold, And I know if we can push some of these things, then we can make the system better rather than making the system harder for those who need these services. Thank you, Abner.
Thank you. I can
Can I
see that.
respond?
Oh, okay.
Kizito, the discussion is already ongoing and now with KRA, but now the issue was the data. We need to clean up the data so that we can be able to present, we can present our case when we're approaching KRA with the data and saying, these people have been verified, they are persons with permanent disability, and they do not require any more assessment in regards to being on getting the privilege. The conversation is ongoing, but it depends on how fast our data is cleaned.
Noted.
Thank you very much for that response. I see at least there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe Vincent, then I'll have Lady Betty, then I can see Zena Rashid is back. So maybe we could just spare 2 minutes each. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if you are getting me or I'm clear.
Yes, you're clear, Vincent, and perhaps
Okay.
you can introduce yourself. You seem to have a lot of background
Thank you.
information on this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Vincent, PhD holder in disability studies. So I'm currently in UAE, based in UAE, so Abu Dhabi. Now, my thought was as good as the one that Kizito had because, again, reevaluation is something that is frustrating from the studies that have been done for persons with disability, as well as the proxies method that has been used for children who might have been diagnosed with any form of disability. Because as Kizito has put it, that somebody comes and you already see that this guy is visually impaired. Why the need for reassessment? I mean, why the need for assessment? We should now come up with programs or intervention strategies that can assist, make this person to fit in the society. And that's why we are advocating for the social model of disability studies. We want to move out from the issue of this person has this kind of impairment as a result of this kind of medical issues or as a result of prenatal, postnatal, or perinatal issues. So we want to move out from that notion that this disability is but we want to make them to fit in the society. That's why we are pushing out from what people like Leonard Davis wrote in their books, that people should move out from the medical perspective to the humanistic and social dimensions of disability, so that each and every person should be seen as somebody who is an equal, not that somebody who is less equal than the others. So the issue of reassessment should, if the conversation is going on as what has been termed by our sister from the National Council for Persons with Disability, that is fine, but it should be hastened with a lot of speed so that now we can see what is the way forward in as far as some of even the invisibility kind of disability are concerned. Invisibility, I mean things such as sorry. Hello?
You can proceed. Yes, we had lost you shortly.
So
You can hear us?
I just So I was saying, we should also focus on this kind of some invisibility kind of disability. Like, for example, people living with or who have been diagnosed by autism spectrum disorder. People have hearing impairment. There are so many kind of invisibility kind of disabilities that are not put into consideration, and the programs and intervention and even diagnostic kind of tools. Yeah, we have, somebody has put it in the chat that we have DSM-5, which is fine, but how do we use it? How can we make the layman so we can take it, adapt and adopt and see which areas can fit within the Kenyan perspective? So the conversation is fine and the discussion and the webinar is very fine. And I thank the people who have organized this kind of forum, because it's a kind of a multidisciplinary kind of approach that we are trying to see how best can we medicate issues in as far as persons with disability in Kenya are concerned. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Vincent, for your insight. And maybe as we wait for Susan to give a reaction to that, perhaps you can also tell us how can we join this kind of conversations? Perhaps is there amendments to the act, or is there a forum that is coming up where maybe we can not only just discuss but also have a positive impact in terms of our conversations, then forming part of a legislation or the decision making process. So Susan, I'll just allow you to answer that because it has a lot of insight. Then I'll take the two comments together.
Okay, the current opportunity that is there that can include what Vincent is saying is providing input on the national persons with disability policy, which is handled by the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection under the Social Protection Department. Currently, they are sending out calls in regards to the review and providing comments. So comments can be it's called what, submitted, so that the policy can be able to cater for everything in regards to the Kenyan context. So far, the comments have us, the National Council, are still preparing our submissions to submit it to them. So if Vincent has any information or anything that he feels that he wants to be incorporated, I can provide the email where you can submit the comments and your views for the enhancement of the national persons with disability policy.
Thank you, Susan. While at it, you can maybe, if you have it in your head, you can maybe just briefly or quickly type it in the chat box so that we can have it. Yes, Zana Rashid, I think we now have you back, and very shortly.
Hello?
Yes, Zana, we can hear you. I think Zana is having challenges with her audio. Lady Betty, maybe if you could come in.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Betty. I'm not from legal fraternity, but I'm a parent actually. But as my status are, I'm very much interested to go or join any discussion concerning disability. And my question and my worry has always been that maybe in Kenya, the focus is so much on physical disability. And I want to commend one of the members here who shared something about the mental health. So you look at it like people with mental health, especially the learners, those people with the maybe with autism, maybe things like dyslexic, dyscalculia. How is the government looking at such like people so that it puts them right into the system, whereby maybe a child or a person who has mental issue like that throughout his life, how is the government looking at such like persons, and how are they going to place them under the government? Maybe also have the exception on maybe things like the KRA and some of these things like maybe jobs, especially also in the government. So that has been my worry, and I really wish to get connected to people or persons like you so that I can also be contributing, because I'm so much eager, so enthusiastic to contribute into such matters so that everyone is taken care of. So I would really wish that someone comments on the same, if it is Susan or whoever, so that I can also get to understand what to do and where to knock. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lady Betty. Perhaps as we want to sum up for the day, I can maybe quickly go through some of the comments, and maybe if Susan will be responding to them. and she can just respond to them jointly. There's another person, Emily Bless, has asked that if you could share the accessibility audits for public offices and spaces for buildings within Nairobi. That is, she has given an email address, but you can, of course, share with us all. I don't know if council there is contemplating maybe instituting a legal action in terms of provisions of the Persons with Disabilities Act. Then maybe a question to the council members who are present. Someone has asked, can the council provide an advocate to represent a PWD in a court of law? I don't know what Devins Mogaka is referring to. I don't know if it's a general matter or general action, or maybe a matter to do with their specific rights. I think Vincent spoke to his comment. We also have Atieno Law. Yes, the discussion is important. There's also a role that political parties have to play in the furtherance of the rights of the people with disabilities, considering that political parties have persons with disabilities leagues. I also agree with that point, but maybe we can have a small content. Then Grace Kirui still touched on, which has been, we cannot overemphasize, that the reassessment is something very frustrating. I have had to shed a few tears once in a while. Then, of course, the issue of tax exemptions we've talked about. This is a very direct question on the caregivers. Emily is asking if caregivers are entitled to tax exemptions, and if yes, how do we go about it? Then Karen says that in her case, I received my disability card in 2019, and what have found is that there was a discrepancy in the card, in that they wrote a different disability compared to what I received. Yeah, so that is one. Then Irene encourages us that as you are championing for the rights, you should also work in collaboration with relevant technical service providers like caregivers and sign language interpreters. Perhaps, Irene, you can give us some of them, because maybe we do not know them. So, and also one vote of thanks that we currently have a progressive mental health act. I hope the branch stays in touch with you. That is also back to the council members. Then Irene finally says that there are various laws and policies that touch on PWDs. Lawyers should push for reforms, and I actually indeed agree with Irene completely. I can see a hand up. We are really constrained of time, so I'll take that as the last comment. I've also seen Council Member Gloria's hand up. You can sum it up for today. So Ludia, if you could just have a minute. You've just popped your hand as I was about to hand over to Susan to give her final insights.
Yes, I'm sorry, Council. I just wanted to point out Dennis to some form of direction. He asked about representation, and actually there is a body that the Kenya Association of the Intellectually Handicapped does offer assistance to those people who require the assistance. So maybe he can get in touch with them and see whether they can offer the seed representation. But they actually ask us as council to just get in touch with people who need representation and point them the direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe, Susan, if you could have your final remarks, maybe if you could respond to the sentiments raised.
Okay, so areas of comments, like I said, is the National Persons with Disability Policy and also the Social Protection Bill and Policy. Those ones are under the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, under the Social Protection Department. They are reviewing those documents in order to incorporate all the models of disability, and not only to focus on the medical area. In regards to caregivers, we already had that discussion, and we normally have webinars with KRA to discuss the aspect of tax exemption. And their stand has always been that if you are a caregiver to a minor, for example, a minor who has autism or a minor who has any other developmental disability, or you are taking care of a person with disability, the person you as the caregiver are the person who pays the tax, not them. For example, if they're dependent on you. So now that right it's not transferable to you, because them, they have the right to the privilege, not have a right. They have the privilege to get tax exemption, but you as the caregiver, you don't, because you're a taxpayer. So we have had that conversation, and we normally have the webinars with them to make that clarification, because we had a caregiver who said that they want to import a vehicle so that they can be able to transport their child from one place to the other. But KRA has been undermined on that, but we have been trying to actually ask them so that it can be, so that the income tax act can be reviewed, so that also caregivers of persons with disability to actually benefit from that, to alleviate their burden of taking care of a person with disability. And then for the accessibility audits, I cannot share the report because it's confidential, but I can share the parameters in order for you, a checklist for you as an institution or an office or whatever. If you're an employer, you can be able to tick some few boxes in regards to making your office or your institution accessibility friendly and accessible for persons with disabilities. So that one I can provide the checklist, but I cannot share the report because it's confidential. The institutions are the ones who approach the council. Then the council is the one who go to the field, come and assess your institution, and then now we give you a report on areas to improve, areas where we have identified, and areas that you require to do that. And now it is on not only the structural, but also we are looking also at the accessibility of your websites, accessibility of your any other uh, online platform that you use to communicate with persons with disability. Also, that one we do an audit on it. And then in regards to sign language, we normally are we have a database of all the professional sign languages, sign language personnel in the regions. So if you require to get services, you just write to the council, and then the council will, depending on the kind of meeting, if it's a conference or a short meeting or any engagement that you require sign language interpreters, you reach out to the council, and the council will contact the nearest sign language in your area or wherever you're holding that event. And then in regards to the reassessment, we are trying as much as possible. We are encouraging all our clients, especially the ones in the old system, to be moved to the new system. And once you're being moved to the new system, all your information will be captured correctly, because the previous system was, as we say, outdated, and it was written, it was normally done by hand. But now this time, you feel that when you go to our account, normally the it's called what, the migration is done in the counties, so you don't necessarily have to come to the headquarters, but you can go to the counties. We have offices there where our personnel will take your details and the required documentation and put it in the system, so that when the car before actually sending it to headquarters, you have the opportunity to look through the data and see that the data is correct. So now that one will address the issue. Like for the one, she said that she got her card in 2019, it was written a wrong disability. Now we can be able, as for now, we can be able to edit, so that when we are giving out the new cards, you have the correct disability. And then now with the new system, it can capture, it's called what, multiple, because there are people who have multiple disabilities. So it captures all the disabilities that you have, so that you can be able to access all the benefits that you are accorded in regards to the disability that is there. So now we are still trying to migrate so that we can address the issue of being reassessed, so that we can be able to provide data and make a correct and like they say, the data has to be it has to be credible and has to be if it can be challenged, we can be able to provide our defense in it. So now the data is the key in regards to ensuring that some of these privileges or these rights that are accorded to persons with disability are actually being provided for without any issues.
Thank you very much for your insight, and we've really had a very interactive session, especially at the comment box. And I've also like to thank those who've joined and who've had the courage of even identifying themselves as part of the community, and how they've of course lived and championed their lives despite living with a challenge. There's a sign language interpreter who's introduced herself. Perhaps the council members can take note and maybe consult her if they need sign language interpreter services. Then I'm just reading the final comments. Zena, her call dropped, but she has been able to give her comments, where she says that there's a group, there's a WhatsApp group for advocates and lawyers living with disability. She's shared a number where if you want to join, you can easily join. Then finally, Karen says in area of mental health, she urges NCPWD to collaborate with persons with physiosocial and intellectual disability, as well as the autistic people. Then Alice Mundia talks of the Persons with Disability Bill 2022 is still pending in Parliament. So is the National Policy for Persons with Disability by the State Department for Social Protection. How can this be fast-tracked? And that's a very good insight. I've heard also from the political class, perhaps you can come in handy because you're the ones who also deal with in legislation, and as well as the challenge Susan has shared in terms of exemption. Perhaps how can we incorporate it and make it law so that KRA cannot have the excuse, and of course also protect the taxman in terms of maybe having some maybe claims that are not genuine. So thank you very much for the wonderful session and for the insight we've had. And thank you once again, Kizito, for your presentation, as well as Susan Okesa from NCPWD. Without further ado, I'd like to now hand over maybe to our convener, that is Gloria Kimani, to give closing remarks and a vote of thanks, and as well as maybe to tell us there's a few documents that Susan has promised to share. Maybe you can tell members how we can be able to access. But thank you very much for staying in throughout the entire session.
Thank you so much for being a very great moderator. I think, do we have reaction on the things? Maybe you can react and thank him for such a great job he has done. I can see Teresa Rovina Nicholas. Maybe I'd like her to speak before I proceed, because she's a council member. Tess, if you can speak to the people before we proceed with a vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Abna, that was a well-conducted webinar. I want to thank the speakers, but let me not do that because Gloria will do that. But above all, I want to thank all our members for actually appreciating to join and listen. It was quite an insightful session. Members, my name is Teresia Vinya Nicholas. I'm one of your council member at Nairobi branch, and I hope that we'll be having more and more interactive sessions like this ones, so that now we see how best to handle any issue, that is becoming an hindrance to our society, because above all, we are the custodians of the law. So yeah, thank you very much. And have a blessed afternoon, and please take care due to the maandamano.
Thank you so much, Teresia. Thank you also for joining. The branch is very grateful. First, I'd like to thank our members, our moderators, our speakers for today, starting with Kizito, who actually came to us and approached the social welfare group and actually told us of their plight and the challenges that they face and how we can help. And this webinar is one of the many that we are going to work with in championing the rights of persons living with disabilities and seeing what we can do from a legal perspective to actually bring improvements in those areas, as we have heard from our presentations. I also want to thank Susan from the National Council of Persons Living with Disabilities. We want to thank you so much for actually even engaging us and coming for this webinar. We do not take it for granted as a branch, and also our members do not. And you have given us very insightful information, and we are so grateful for that. I would also like to thank the members of the Social Welfare Committee who are in this group. Kathy Linda is present, Brian Onderi, Perpetual, Terry also for organizing this webinar. Would like to thank you for it. And yes, Kizito again, who's also a member of the Social Welfare Committee. We are grateful for you. Also grateful for all the members who hit to our call to come for this webinar and see how we can work together. And if anyone has a question, maybe if I can have someone from the Secretariat putting the number of our branch number, if we can have anyone from LSK Nairobi branch, putting our number on the chat so that we can be able to reach to you. And if you have any questions, you can reach it through that number. Also, I'd like to thank all the people who came. I saw there are people who came from Uganda. We want to thank you. We also had Vincent, if I'm not wrong, from UAE. We thank you then also for your insight. We are grateful for that. And also all the representatives from organizations that deal with persons living with disabilities. We want to thank you for your great work and even the information that you have shared. And particularly, I think, I'd like to thank, I think, was it Lydia who gave us details on the people who can be helped if you have any challenges and you would like legal advice or legal representation. I think you can reach out to them and see how they can help. Also, you can reach out to the branch. We also have a public interest litigation committee where you can reach out to them and we can give you the way forward. All in all, I'd like to thank you for your participation and also not forgetting our secretariat for doing a great job. Asanteni sana and have a good day, the rest of the day.